Welcome to the fifth video in this series covering modifying a mesh using C# in Godot. In our previous video, we were getting the rotate and the zoom to happen on the cube so that we could actually start realistically modifying the cube from any angle that we wanted to look at. Unfortunately, as I was working on this, there's one more step that we still have to do before we're modifying the mesh. And that step is we need the ability to be able to click somewhere on the cube and to know where our mouse pointer was when we clicked on it. I guess first some housekeeping tasks to mention. This video series has been up to this point. I've been using Windows 10 and it's been a busy month. I haven't posted a video in about a month and I've moved over to Linux. And so one would not expect to see any differences. Godot should look the same, Writer should look the same. There shouldn't be any real differences here, but just be aware that I'm actually using Linux now for these tutorials. So what we are trying to do here, I guess let's bring Godot up. So what we want to do here is when the game is actually running, we want to be able to like click on the cube somewhere and to know where the point is where we're clicking, because what we're going to need to do then is to take that point and kind of iterate through the mesh structure to know, like, it depends what we're looking to do with the mesh, and I still don't know yet what I'm looking to do. But I mean, let's pretend like we wanted to select this triangle face. So by clicking on this triangle face would be selected in some way. Well, we need to know where this point is so that we can iterate through the mesh and then know, oh, okay, here you are, you're within this triangle, therefore, we're going to do something with it. So I was looking into this to see how one would do this. And I was going to do it the caveman way, but fortunately, the people who make Godot realize this is such a common task that they created an easy way to do it, or relatively easy. So what we're needing to do is something called ray casting. We want to create a ray from where the camera's at, and then when we're looking into the world, our screen is actually just a kind of a lens that we're looking at through the world. So when we click somewhere on the screen, here, that's actually being kind of, think of it kind of like an arrow going out, from where your cursor's at into the world. So like, when we're doing it in this game here, what we would want to do here, let's just restart the game. So what we'd want to do here is like, so when we're clicking here, like way out here obviously, but we want an arrow to come from the camera, go through that arrow point and out into the world. And obviously when we click on the cube, when the arrow goes out in the world, we want to know, hey, I hit the cube. So doing the ray casting manually, they even give directions on how one could do that. But they also mention that, yeah, you can do that, but this is such a common activity that our collision objects have built-in signals for that. And this video series hasn't yet covered signals, but it seems like now is a good time to actually deal with them. So when I was messing around with this, we're going to notice some quirks to the implementation done in C# with Godot currently. Again, C# is fairly new with Godot, so I'm not going to hold this against them. This is certainly there's a workaround for this kind of annoying thing that happens, so it's not a big deal. Hopefully in a later version they'll get this sorted out. So it's not going to work 100% clean, but I certainly will kind of walk through what I needed to do to get this to happen. All right, so what we want to do here is we want to we're going to need some sort of collision object to work with. And all we have right now is a mesh instance, which is the cube. Well, probably the easiest way to create a collision object with the shape that's the same as the cube is with the cube selected. If you go up to this mesh menu and you pull it down, there's different options here. And I'm just going to go ahead and create this, or select this create convex static body. So when I click on that, you'll notice that it created a static body in a collision shape. And now when I go to the static body, if I go over to the inspector, you'll see I have the static body selected. But then if I go on the node tab, now we can see these different signals. And a few of the signals are interesting. One is this input event, which is the one we're going to use. But before we do that, we're probably going to want to play a little bit with the mouse entered and mouse exited just to kind of get our feet wet. So what we want to do is when we move the mouse over the cube, basically in our view, we want to just detect it. Maybe print out something that says you've entered the mouse has entered the cube, and then the same with the exited. But let's do one at a time. So what one does to create these signals is you would left click on mouse entered until it's selected, and then down here you would pick connect. And then it's going to ask you to attach it, or to what node do you want this to contact, I guess, to connect the signal to. And our script is on the main node, if you remember, so we're going to have it send the signal to the main node so the main script can pick up on it. We want to make sure the make function is on, which it is by default, so that should be fine. And this name isn't exactly following C# convention because it has the snake case, but I'm just going to leave it as is because I don't want to complicate this any more than it needs to be. So then I'm going to hit connect. And then you'll notice that if you scroll down in the editor here, you'll see that it created kind of a garbled. See, this is kind of the thing that was happening to me every once in a while, where it was doing some weird stuff. Let me save this and go into Writer and see what Writer says about this. All right, so that was just a visual glitch. But there's still a problem here because it's putting the method. So the problem here is it's putting the method outside the object. So like in our main file, we have this public class main, and this needs to be a method inside of that. And right now it's sitting outside of it. That's why there's red all over the place. So I mean, the simple solution here is just to pick this up and to just put it inside, and that fixes it. Again, it's not a big deal. It's just kind of annoying because it puts it outside the class, and that's not exactly where it needs to go, but that's fine. I mean, this is not something that's so horrible that we can't deal with it. So let's say when they've entered it, we'll say you have entered the cube. 3 exclamation points, and let's spell have correctly. All right, so let's go back to Godot, and let's go ahead and fire up. Let's go to 3D mode. Yeah, see, I don't know why it's doing that. That's weird. Let's go to 3D mode and hit the play button, and then it should fire up the game here. Now let's pick up the window here. So now down here, or let's keep an eye on for when it enters. So not there yet, not there yet. We're over here, over here. No, let's sneak in here. Ooh, you have entered the cube. We'll leave the cube. Let's try coming in from the top. You've entered the cube. Fantastic. Let's hit escape to close the window. Okay, so that handles the entering the cube. Let's select the static body again. And now let's do the mouse exited signal. So we're going to click on that, the mouse exited. We're going to click connected, or connect, excuse me. We want to attach it to the main node, so that's fine. It's going to be called on static body mouse exited. I guess we're okay with that. Hit connect. Okay, now that's displaying correctly, so I don't understand. And down here, this one works okay too. So go back to 3D. Let's save the scene. Go back to Writer. We're going to have that same problem where the method is going to be outside of the class. So pick this up, put it in the class, copy, paste. You have exited the cube. And let's go back to Godot. Let's fire up the game. Let's pull it up so we can see the console. All right. So we've entered the cube, exit the cube. Let's come at it from this way. Enter the cube, exit the cube. How about the bottom? Entered, exited, escape. Fantastic. Now this doesn't really help us as far as what we're looking to accomplish, but kind of building up our knowledge of how these things work, because mouse entered and mouse exited, like that's the first type, almost a trivial type signal to test out to make sure we understand how to implement them on the C# end. So now we can try to do the harder one, because what we're looking to grab here is not the mouse being in the cube. I mean, sure, when we click in the cube, it's going to be inside the cube, but we want to actually capture the event. So luckily they have this input event method that we can use. We don't need these mouse entered and mouse exited at all. I'm going to leave them in there. I just wanted to implement them simply so we knew how to do it. So then, we're slowly building up our knowledge, getting more and more complicated. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the input event signal. I'm going to click on connect. It's going to be attached. They're going to connect to the main node. It's going to be called that, and that's fine. I'm going to hit connect. I'm going to look for where. All right, it seemed to be okay there. Let's go back to 3D. I mean, it's okay in the sense that it's consistently putting it outside the class, but at least it's not that garbled stuff I was seeing earlier. So let's scroll way down here. There he is. Let's move him up. Let's get rid of some of this white space. And as we know, I don't like this at event, so I'm going to call it the event. That was covered in a previous video. I'm also going to make these more C# like. I mean, we're not using these other parameters, but I just want to do some housekeeping here. Okay, so now we want to go ahead and we want to detect when the left mouse button is clicked. So this is going to be very similar to what we were doing when we were doing up here. When we were doing the alt pressed and the moving the mouse. We're going to probably do a switch statement, and we're going to capture or see what kind of event it is in a case statement, and then based on that, we're going to do something. So what we're going to do is we're going to switch on the event. And luckily, we're getting all these things that are coming in here, but the event is the only one that one and the click position are the two we're going to care about. So what we want to do is we want to, in case of input event mouse button, break, and then we want to detect if it's the left mouse button. So we're going to go ahead and do a switch on that too, a switch within a switch. We did that above earlier. Because we're going to care about the left mouse button now, but maybe later we'll also want the middle and right mouse button to do something useful. So if we do that, and then we do the get mouse button index, and then we want to do a case 1, which is the left mouse button. And remember, when you have a button, whether it's a key press or a mouse button, there's two cases. There's two. Well, using case here is kind of confusing. There are two states it can be in. It can be in the pressed and it can be in the released, and all we care about is the pressed at this point. So we probably want to wrap this up in a input event a mouse button if statement. We want to make sure it's pressed. I think it's called is pressed. Yes. Okay, so when it comes into this method, that means that some event happened in the object. Now, there's lots of events that could happen there, including a mouse move. But we're going to switch on the event. We're only going to care about the event mouse button. And within the event mouse button, when it's that, we're only going to care about the first mouse button. And what we're going to say is we're going to say Um, you clicked at point, and then we need the point, and luckily coming into this this callback, this method for the signal, this click position is something we can count on it being there. I guess it was 2 parentheses. Is there an opening? Yeah, I guess I just typed a parenthesis by accident. Okay, so in theory, this should be exactly what we want. So, we already set this up so mouse entered and mouse exited happens, which isn't useful for our long-term goal here, but like I said earlier, it just kind of gets us used to doing it. And then this is the one we actually care about, which anytime there's an input event within that cube. Now remember, these events are happening not on the cube mesh instance, because the cube mesh instance doesn't have, it does have some signals, but not these signals. But we created that collision object, the static body in this case, and so luckily the static body, which we kind of form fitted around, so it's the same size as our mesh instance. We're using the static body, and you can see it as signals attached by this little, I don't know, kind of like a radio icon. And so that's the reason we're able to do this, because we have a collision body on this cube. Now, I'm kind of thinking, like, if we end up doing something that the cube doesn't change shape in our next step, which is to modify the mesh, then this static body won't need to change its shape. But if we start like dragging points around, then we're going to have to figure out, like, every time we drag it to like recompute this collision shape. So that's a topic for a future video if we decide to do that, but I just thought I would mention that. So everything we have here should be good. We should get everything that we need here as far as printing only when the left mouse button is pressed, and obviously when a button is pressed, it's going to care. Like if we wanted the middle or right mouse button to do something, we could do a case 2 and I think a case 3. I don't know the numbering. We'd have to look it up. I'm case 2 I think might be middle and case 3 right, or maybe case 2 is right and case 3 is middle. I don't know the numbering here, but I know case 1 is the left button, so that's honestly all we care about. So let's go to Godot and let's hit the play button. And in theory, we should be good here. So let's scroll this up. Let's do the one. Let's make sure that what we had working before works. We've entered and exited. Awesome. All right, we're entered again. And now let's click. Left click. All right, we have a point there. Let's right click. Right click does nothing. That's what we want, so that's fine. Let's move the mouse and click again. So this is what we need, because we need to know where our mouse pointer, when we shoot a ray from the camera to the cube, we need to know where that line that's being created by our mouse pointer from the camera to the mouse pointer, where it's intersecting with the cube, because then now we know, oh, the cube hit right there, the ray hit right there on the cube. So now we know a point in space, and now we can iterate through the cube mesh structure to see, well, what does that mean? I mean, what's the nearest? I mean, it depends what we want to do here. If we just, like I said, if we just want to highlight this triangle, then all we're going to care about is, okay, well, what triangle am I in? Well, there's no way to query that, I don't think. So we're probably going to have to iterate through the mesh structure to find out. But we've already done that before when we drew the as I call it, the baggy pants mesh around this using immediate mode geometry. So we already know how to do that. So we could use that. The mesh data tool, since I mentioned before that one of the benefits of the mesh data tool is given something, it gives you something else. So I haven't looked yet, but maybe given this point of intersection, it will tell you what face you're on. I'm guessing that's not the case, but iterating through the mesh structure won't be a big deal. Or if we decided, let's say we wanted to like subdivide this edge, we would click there, and then we'd go iterate through the mesh and find find an edge that was in a certain threshold of where I clicked and then do something with it. And unfortunately, the do something is going to be manual code. So that's going to be a much longer video. And that kind of leads me into the next discussion here as far as why I changed platforms, operating system platforms. So as I was looking at how one modifies the mesh and kind of iterates through it, and like I realized that I had a lot of deficiencies in my knowledge of just 3D in general. And so what I'm going to do on this channel as well is I'm going to have a concurrent video series where I'm learning 3D, like not within necessarily Godot. In fact, it won't be with Godot. I mean like the math, cross product, dot product, and generating wireframes myself on the screen, not using any 3D app per se. Perspective matrices and so forth. I bought a couple of books, and I think what I'm probably going to be doing here is developing as a side project on this channel. Probably going to be in GTK because I think I can get a nice 2D canvas in GTK. I'm going to develop a trivial 3D app that's not going to do much more than what we're seeing here. It's going to allow you to generate a mesh and maybe rotate around and do some trivial things. But I mean, it's going to be like ground level type. I mean, there's going to be a lot of ground level stuff where there's no engine that's going to be doing the work for me. I'm going to be drawing the lines between points and using the perspective matrix and doing all sorts of mathy stuff, so to speak. And I feel that for me personally, that's going to be useful so that I have a better fundamental understanding of what Godot's like hiding from me so that I don't need to know that stuff. But in this case, modifying the mesh, I think I do need to know that. This isn't, necessarily just doing game stuff. This is like modifying the fundamentals of the mesh, and I'm admitting that I'm weak there. And I could pursue that using Godot, but I think I'm going to continue in this series. Don't get me wrong. We still are going to finish this video series of modifying the mesh in Godot, but I think I need some knowledge in order to do justice to this topic because, I'd like to be able to do some fairly interesting things with this cube, moving stuff around and so forth, but I also want to know more fundamentally how these meshes work and how they, I don't mean work in Godot, just work in 3D in general. I'm curious how 3D works at all. So, I bought a couple of 3D books and I'm going to go through on these other video series of like starting from scratch where we're not using any 3D engine, we're defining everything ourselves, we're doing the math ourselves. I'm going to be much like I did with presenting web pages here, I'm going to be presenting, dot product, cross product, determinants, that type of stuff that I've been looking into because I personally am interested in that. Now, somebody who's on this channel that may not care about that, they need not watch those video series. I'll make it clear up front which video is for which series. It should be pretty clear. Based on the content, but I'll try to do some thumbnails. I haven't really been doing custom thumbnails on the videos, so I've just been kind of picking almost a random screenshot in the video. But I'll try to be a little bit more careful about what I select on the thumbnails, so that if somebody's visiting the channel and they want to continue down the watching the Godot videos that I have, that it'll be clear that that's a Godot video. And if they're interested more in the fundamental 3D work that I'm going to be doing in GTK, then they can watch that video series. I'd like to think that there's overlap there. So like the people who are watching this for the Godot content, I'd like to think that they also might be interested in learning a little bit more 3D as far as the fundamental math and so forth. Much like I caveated with this series, though, I mean, I'm a noob. I'm not an expert. I've gone through some books since I've read, and that's the path I'm going down. I'm also not looking to do anything with Vulkan or OpenGL. Like I said, I'm looking to have a, because you can generate 3D graphics on a 2D canvas, because that's really what your screen is. I mean, when you generate an image in 3D, that's what you're doing. So this isn't meant to be necessarily an interactive thing that I'm building. That's why I'm not going to use OpenGL or Vulkan, at least at first, because I just want to understand how these things fit together and draw a picture. But at the same time, you know, could that series turn into an OpenGL or Vulkan series? It could. I don't know either of those APIs, but I don't know Godot here either. So, uh, I may not understand, or I may be leaping before I look here. But going through the 3D books that I at least nothing there seemed like it was overly hard to the point where I couldn't understand how to generate something, a simple wireframe using just 2D primitives of drawing lines on a canvas or drawing individual pixels on a canvas. So I'm going to give that a shot. So anyway, I'm going to end the video here. I guess my apologies for taking as long as I did. Not only did I change platforms and I was doing some research on this 3D stuff, but in my kind of personal life, my personal life, I'm going through a move and packing and so forth. So things are going to get a little bit busy here for a while, but this is also a nice break to have too. So, and I do appreciate. I finally got my first comment on one of my videos a couple of weeks ago, and it kind of made me re-energized because I had been making these videos. Not so much, again, not an expert at this topic. I'm still a noob. But, I was hoping to get these videos out there so that maybe people could comment and encourage me or teach me, hey, you kind of got that wrong. Here's how it really works. And that's the reason that I was making these series this series was to be kind of a give and take type information exchange. And it just made me feel good. That person who commented on my first video, that person is the only person that commented on my video. Got a bunch of likes, and I do appreciate that, guys. But it just felt good to actually somebody actually is looking at these, because I was starting to wonder if anybody was even watching these. I saw the view counts go up, but nobody was commenting. I mean, granted, I don't want somebody saying you suck, but just having any sort of feedback lets me know. Recording these and posting these and doing the research, it's somebody else besides me is getting use in these, and I'm getting use out of them, but that's why I'm posting these so that others can as well. So anyway, thank you all for watching and subscribing, and I hope that the direction that I'm scheduling for this channel, I'm hoping that doesn't really upset anybody here. Godot is still going to be worked on, but I just think pursuing 3D as well, as far as non-Godot, just generic 3D, I think there's a lot of value in that. I know for me, I need to really learn that so that I can understand under the hood what Godot is doing. So anyway, thank you for watching the video, and I will be back soon with another video. Take care.